So Undertale turned 5 this year. It was enough of a milestone to warrant another playthrough, but not enough of a milestone to earn my I beat Sans Undertale merit badge. Sorry. So like the cowardly sheep I am, I decided to dig deeper into not only why this game was and is so beloved, but to put under a little bit of scrutiny and see what parts haven't aged so well. The game can handle it now, right? 5 years is old enough to stop shitting yourself? Wish I could say the same for its fans on Fur Affinity, but baby steps, right? So this video will assume that you've already played through this game at least once. A high-risk roll, I know. But if you somehow still haven't, consider this your recommendation. So with all that said, let's data some skeletons. Right away, one thing that has definitely aged well about this game is its writing. Plain and simple, this is one of the best written RPGs of the modern era. In a market filled with games with kooky moments and people speaking in anime voices while serious music plays, Undertale remains consistent the whole way through. While the ruins can start off low-key, which is fitting given the smallness and slow pacing better punctuates how Toriel's idea to keep the human there would be a bad idea long-term. It's all top shelf once you hit the Snowden chapter. Pyrus' try-hard nature to be capable, coupled with Sans' try-hard nature to be lazy, and having them bounce off each other is a literal treat every single screen. Classic Tex Avery stuff. Waterfall is probably my least favorite by default. It has its moments, but Undying Silence through 60% of it makes her arc feel a little bit more incomplete than the others. She has the most fervent hatred for humans, and we don't really get to see why that is. I mean, sure, she's a hothead, but you'd think that the equipment that you collect throughout the game, owned by the previous 6 humans, would play into her racism somewhat. But it doesn't. It makes her date in particular really jarring because our last encounter with her, she was drying herself out, desperate to chase us down and kill us. She doesn't react when you give her the water, and she doesn't bring it up when you go to her house. Feels like she's a completely different character, and all that tension and dread that came from the Waterfall chapter is posthumously undermined. This will sort of tie into a criticism I have later with the game's morality system, but for now I'll just say that Undying just ultimately feels undercooked to me. Her house isn't though. No, for my part, the best chapter is Hotland hands down. Alphys hits way too close to home in a good way, and her comedy plays into her character arc better than any other of the main monsters. Constant stops for cutscenes is undesirable usually, but I just couldn't bring myself to feel contempt for this adorable lizard every time she stopped me. Her and Metaton's dynamic isn't as strong as Sans and Papyrus's, but Metabot brings more unique set pieces to his puzzles. And the finale here kills everything. Kills my eardrums, my emotions, my sexual preferences. It's a great penultimate chapter, just in general. So I have little complaints about the story front. It's paced well, and its finale is phenomenal. But this is the part where I start to draw up the ire and discuss my main issues for this game, in that its whole is nowhere near as strong as the sum of its parts. Alright, so from my perception, Undertale seems to communicate 2 themes: empathy and the relationship between players and video games, especially RPGs. As you waddle about the underground, you have a choice on how you handle the many monsters that want a chance at your soul. Negotiate mercy, or murder him. Morality in games is always a tricky thing to get right because player actions can drive a character to do things that make no sense in the context of the world itself. Games like Infamous have most of the evil decisions making no logical sense beyond the player messing around with the zeros and ones that inhabit the sandbox. They especially don't make sense given Cole's established character before the game starts. Undertale tries to alleviate this by the character of, well, Kara. Now I know there's a lot of speculation on who Kara is, but for the purposes of this video, we're going at the angle that they are the embodiment of a player's want for level ups and power in RPGs. At the end of a genocide run, this smiling Echo Fire looking ass thanks you for bringing him back. He then goes on about how good it feels watching the numbers go up and becoming stronger. So you can see the through line, yeah? To include that classic RPG gameplay loop where it comes at the cost of fleshed out and beloved characters. A game that has more consequences for your default RPG muscle memory. But this is where my issues begin, because, and don't kill me now, Undertale is not a good RPG. Alright, hear me out. When you play an RPG, gaining stronger not only comes with bigger numbers, but it comes with different abilities and ways to fight the enemy. It puts more emphasis on avatar strength than the mechanical ability of the player. Some of the best RPGs balance this improvement scale well, and Undertale very much does not. I mean, sure, you do get stronger in Genocide, bigger health pool, and you start one-shotting enemies more. Since your only method of violence in this game is a standard attack, it gets boring after a while. You could argue that this is its own message, that all those fancy schmancy abilities in your Final Fantasies and Dragon Quests are all just numbers at the end of the day. But it's how you use those numbers to take on bigger and mounting threats. This could have applied to Undertale as well, but then the game will just skip most of its encounters because the monsters are afraid of you. But wouldn't it have been better for them to try to put you down early? A justification to throw in stronger monster encounters in the early game. Maybe some Genocide exclusive monsters beyond the 2 bosses that you get. Then the last few areas being completely devoid of monsters, they're terrified of you. That would be way more punctual. You've beaten them into fearful retreat. And again, this could be coupled with violent act abilities, showing your cruelty by taking down monsters in a more sadistic way. But nah, just swing at them until they're gone. This essentially makes them mechanically identical to pacifist runs, except you don't need to solve a puzzle, so they're actually simpler. On the subject of pacifist runs, I feel like those could be improved too. Our character is a child, so it's reasonable to think that they don't have the perfect social skills out of the gate. They especially wouldn't be able to talk reason with every monster imaginable. Flowey hints at the end of the ruins that you may eventually run into a monster that cannot be talked out of a fight. We know that this is alluding to Asgore in the neutral ending, but when I first played this game, it got me super curious, like, oh crap, there's bound to be monsters that want out of here no matter what. But nope, this is reserved for main boss monsters only. I'm saying that learning new negotiation skills could have taken the place of levels, gaining them by talking to overworld monsters or by other means. In this scenario, you would have a more nuanced social moveset that could work in more different ways with the bestiary. You would have YouTube compilations where people flirted with all of the monsters. All of them. But where it stands now, your standard pacifist run involves either brute forcing different acts until you win, or if you know what to do, taking a handful of turns to do the acts in order and winning. Typically taking the same, if not more, turns than if you were genociding. We'll get back to the game's duality in a minute, but for now I'm sure you're asking, Crispy, why are you clutching your fingerless gloved hands on your armchair of game design so badly? Well, because my whole point of Undertale being a bad RPG means Kara is not us. Be honest with yourself. Did you do a genocide run because you wanted to see numbers go up and become stronger? Or did you do it because you wanted to see a different ending? If anything, we're Flowey, not Kara. During his monologue in the end of the Geno run, he talks about doing both sides of the coin because he was curious and abused his determination, i.e. save states. So saying we were motivated by Kara so he could possess our avatars and spill into the good ending is inconsistent with the actual motivation that most players actually had. I mean, most sought after the genocide run so they could earn their I killed Sans Undertale merit badge, which I still don't have. Damn it! That's another thing I don't get. The monsters themselves. 90% of the beasts that you come across aren't seen in any of the major towns or locations, save for the mini-bosses and the leads. So you think the encounter monsters are just the ones willing to gut you for your soul, yeah? But these guys never bring up how or why they're attacking you. Some of them are hardly coherent. All this while some monsters are quite helpful and even sell you stuff. I understand that some are less violently inclined, but everyone's out of these damn caverns, yeah? I would have loved to have a food item that you buy from a vendor end up being poisoned, or something. This separation of monsters you talk to versus the ones you fight is a minor one, but considering Toby Fox was inspired by the negotiation system of Shin Megami Tensei, you'd figure the main tenet of this game would be more fleshed out in the context of the world. This could be both a blessing and a curse when you come back to a game years later after you first played it. You're able to see it with a fresh perspective and see what holds up and what was just merely nostalgia. This was the case for some of my favorites like Crash Twinsanity, or the first Medieval, or Spider-Man on the PS1. I was floored by Undertale when it first came out, and felt that it did no wrong. As time went on, I ruminated on the game's core themes and design and felt that its whole was not as memorable as its parts. And while the game's morality is a step above what was available at the time, it really fails to connect to the player on a mechanical level like, say, Dragon Age 1 or Deus Ex did. And sadly, this fresh playthrough confirmed all this. For me anyway. By no means is this game not worth playing. The level of heart and passion on display here is out of this world. And its feel-good vibe still sustains, even if digging deeper for meaning behind its relationship with the player's wants is confused and muddled. And with the game's successor in development, I wonder if Toby felt that he wrote himself into a corner with the first game's design, since it tells the player outright that their choices mean nothing. This has remained yet to be seen, but I still love Undertale enough to want to know where he's going with this universe. This has been Crispy the Sheep. Please don't aim for the head.